what if I could increase my income to the point where I didn't have to work anymore? My specialty is looking for investments and different opportunities that are producing above average returns. So the reason that we're able to get such high returns is because we're targeting very niche markets that aren't so widespread. But that also means that you have to make a bold move and you have to be like very decisive and determined to make that one thing work. Once I'm in, I'm in.
Welcome to Be Bold Branding, where we discuss the power of differentiating yourself through your own unique story and standout personal brand. If you feel like you never have enough time, the next few minutes you spend listening to this podcast will be worth its weight in gold. We're talking with Austin Zelan today, a financial expert and investment coach who focuses on productivity and efficiency. Isn't that what we all need? Mm-hmm. He's been featured in Forbes, Yahoo Finance, NBC, and many more, and has over 1 million followers on Instagram.
Welcome to Be Bold Branding, Austin.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to talk to you because, as we were talking before we came on camera here, we've really been focusing this season on bold moves, and we know that you've got some insight on that. Tell us about maybe a first bold move you made to set the course and direction for where you're at, or the biggest that you think you've done to date. You got anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, definitely. So that's actually been a core strategy of mine with all of my investments. Even starting out early on when I was investing into different industries, I didn't really have anybody to guide me down a certain path, or nobody advised me, nobody taught me how to do it correctly. So a lot of these moves were bold moves. And I'd say the hardest ones have always been like new industries. So for example, you could invest into something that's tried and true. You could do stock market, you could do the Forex market, you can invest in real estate. And there are many people out there who are already doing it. So for a lot of people, it's like comfortable and it's like, okay, well, I could listen to these 100 gurus on the internet and figure out what I'm doing. But that also creates a lot of competition. So there's a lot of competition in real estate. And my specialty is looking for investments and different opportunities that are producing above average returns. So the reason that we're able to get such high returns is because we're targeting very niche markets that aren't so widespread. But that also means that you have to make a bold move and you have to be like very decisive and determined to make that one thing work. And so the biggest thing for me is just, first of all, being consistent, but second of all, doing my research and also knowing that once I'm in, I'm in. So I think with boldness, you have to have commitment. And when you're fully committed to that thing, it happens to work out every single time, and it's usually been not exactly the way that I expected it to work out. So a totally different outcome, but I still achieved the success that I was looking for, but I probably took a different path than I initially thought I would take. So those are things that I think do come with boldness, and you have to be okay with them, being fully committed and potentially taking a different path than you originally wanted to.
Man, the takeaways in that alone are huge. Like, we could do an hour-long talk just on those things alone, because you hit on things that I am serious about. Commitment. Like, there's no such thing as half in, right? You burn the bridges behind you. You got to move forward. Consistency. You can't be in today, out tomorrow, in the next day, out the next day. Like, commitment to those things. And into flexibility is so true, because I think in any industry, you map it in your mind and then you adapt to what it really becomes, right? And we were literally having this conversation earlier today about my real estate firm, because I don't think as a business person you ever stop that process of being flexible to where you need to go and how that ends up looking.
And contrary to the market, which is one of your favorites, Michael, he says, sometimes you just got to go contrary to the market, because that's where the riches are, right?
Yep.
Doing different, which is, both of you have minds aligned correctly. So let me take it back just a little bit, Austin, and ask you a question that maybe you don't get asked that often, but was there some person in your life early on, or some event that you experienced in your life early on that kind of brought you to this place that you are today? Like, why are you doing what you're doing?
Yeah, I think it was mostly just circumstances and a particular time in my career when I realized what I actually wanted to do. So early on, I tried a bunch of different things, a few different industries. I've been in real estate and marketing and a few different things, and I couldn't really put my finger on exactly what I like to do. And then when I finally tried that thing that I really loved, it just clicked. And I knew that that's what I was going to be doing for the rest of my life. Now, still, I didn't know the path that I was going to take to get there. And actually, at that time, I was working at Microsoft as a consultant. And so that was like my full time job. But on the side, I had been investing for a little while. And I knew that I wanted to do it. And this kind of goes back to the consistency thing. I had been doing it for a couple years, and I still wasn't at a place where I could retire and be a full time investor, And so I had to figure out a way where, number one, I could become more profitable consistently. But number two, is this actually going to work for me? Maybe I'm doing the wrong investments. Maybe I just need to invest more capital. Maybe I need to use a different model or a different investment style. So that in itself took a long time to figure out. But I knew that once I tried investing and once I had my first taste, I knew that that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life. Now, from there, it was just a journey of figuring out exactly what I want to invest in, trying out all these different strategies, different ways of accessing capital, different ways of investing and managing my investments, and then also, of course, different ways of producing cash flow for my everyday expenses. So that was a whole process. Thankfully, I had a good job at that time, which I just kept my expenses very minimal, and I spent what I had to, and everything else I just invested. And I think that experience, it really showed me that, number one, I didn't really like working in the corporate world, and I knew that I could achieve more if I was an investor and I had access to more capital. It kind of came to a point where I realized, I could try and just work this job, and then on the side, I could do the things that I'm passionate about. So I serve on a lot of nonprofit organizations, or with them, and on several boards for nonprofit organizations. And that's what I'm really passionate about. And I thought about it. There was a certain point where it came to a realization, hey, by myself, if I'm working this job, I can only impact maybe 5, maybe 10 people if I really tried, maybe every year. Let's say 10 people a year. But I thought about it, and what if I could increase my income to the point where I didn't have to work anymore? And now I had all this income to impact more people, because then I could start maybe hiring others to help me coach people, or just funding different projects and organizations and missions and whatever I want to fund. And my impact would grow exponentially. So I knew that the reason that I'm doing this is to do more of what I'm already doing and what I'm passionate about. But I had to figure out a way to separate my dollars from hours and also increase that income to the point where I could impact more people than I was already impacting.
Yeah, I like that. I like that too. So really, there's almost a takeaway there that you were willing to sacrifice a couple of things. Like you said, you keep your expenses low. You probably gave up on a whole lot of things that you could afford to go buy, but you didn't, right? And you held to that discipline, and but then also being driven by that passion to do more exponentially is the word I'm looking for, right?
You got it.
Yeah, finally, I came to
You hit it.
and you were able to do that because of sticking to the plan, even though being flexible to that plan and letting it evolve. Yeah.
Okay. I have a favor to ask you.
Sure.
All right. So you did a TED Talk, which we watched, and it's why it never feels like you have enough time.
Yeah.
But in that TED Talk, there's one story that really sticks out to me, and it happened to you in first grade. Would you please tell this story? Because I think it tells a lot about you and like why you operate the way that you do.
Yeah. So, I was in first grade, and I was just going to class, and I remember my parents, they would always just kind of check in on me like, hey, how are you like in school? And I just remember being so incredibly bored in first grade. Like, I thought all the questions that they were asking me and like the tests and quizzes, it was just like such obvious information. And I don't know why, but I just felt like it was common sense. And I'm like, why are they even quizzing me on this? And I was just incredibly bored. And I would always complain to my parents. I'm like, I'm so bored in school. And at a certain point, they realized that, okay, maybe he's actually bored. Let's talk to the principal and see what we can do. So they took me to the principal's office. And of course, that's kind of a scary experience, no matter if it's good or bad.
Yes.
And I remember being nervous. And then the principal's like, okay, well, let's give you an exam. And so they gave me this exam and basically just tested my abilities in different like subjects. So like English and writing and math and all these things. And so I was in first grade, but my scores were placing me in like fourth or fifth grade for several of the subjects. And so they basically talked to my parents and they're like, well, we can't really put him in fourth grade. He's just too young, but we can skip a grade. And then basically I'd finish out that year in the second grade and then go straight to third grade. So I did like a couple weeks in second grade and then they bumped me to third grade, which was really cool. But for me, it was mostly that I felt it was a waste of time. I was like, man, I have to sit here so long and do this stuff. Like, what if there was a better way? So I was always looking for ways to accelerate that education because I wanted access to more information, more knowledge, more skills, because I wanted to just move on to other things. I knew that, school is not forever. And I wanted to get through that information and learn it so I could start using it.
That's fascinating.
I know. When he said, I just figured out I was wasting time. Like, what else could I get done? And I'm like, you're in first grade.
You're in first grade.
First
Man,
grade.
I was thinking about whether or not I was going to get
Nuts
a
and
chocolate ice cream or a strawberry one. Like, I mean, I was just as bored as you, but it wasn't because I was smart. It was because I'm like, what am I going to do? When's ice cream time? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, hey, I love a good ice cream time too.
That's right. That's right.
I do love it. I make jest of it, but I remember being impressed about it too, because it really does show how you're manifesting now as an adult. You're living actually some of those thought processes that came. And we at BrandFace, it's so important for us when we deal with clients because we're always showing them the why. Why do you do what you do? Because if you can express that then to all of your clientele, to your ideal customer, then you're going to have more business than you can handle. And you clearly have that dialed in really good. And even being able to articulate it back then to that level at that time. Right. What tips can you share with our listeners who are struggling with like work-life balance? Is there certain things that they can start doing specifically?
Yeah, so I actually talked a little bit about this in my TED Talk, but for me, at least personally, I try to stick to three main things that I'm going to accomplish every day. And what I find is that whenever I think about a certain activity that I need to do, all of a sudden my mind gets flooded with all these little activities that I think I need to do, but in reality, I just need to do that thing. And all those things, they tend to work out for the most part. This is not to say that you shouldn't prepare. I think you should always be prepared. But when you do that one big thing that you need to do, and then, your other two big things for the day, you really just have to focus on that task and you have to get it done. And then if you have extra time, you can focus on the little things to kind of wrap things up. But I find that after three things, you just get distracted. You get fatigued throughout the day. Your thought process has become less effective. Your decision making isn't as great. You're not as alert. You're not as focused. And so then it just becomes a mess and you're exhausting yourself for no reason. So if you can focus on three big things at the beginning of your day, just get them done. Everything else, if you have time, you can get to it. And that helps me get things off of my to-do list because I know, okay, today I need to do 1, 2, and 3. And that keeps my to-do list short. Even though I have many different things that I need to do, I know my three main things for the day and I'm going to do them no matter what because I'm committed to getting those things done. And my day is not over until they're done.
Yeah, really good. That's really good. Now, do you find that you can be more efficient if you do the hardest thing first or the hardest thing last and build up to it? Or is that sort of individual to the person?
It's kind of interesting. I was just talking to my little brother about this the other day. And I believe he's in like 7th grade. And so he's asking me about his different assignments. He's like, oh, well, which one should I do first? And I thought about it. And for me personally, I like to do the hardest thing first because I'm the most alert. I'm the most energetic. I can attack that thing with all my energy and all my focus. But I think that there's a lot of people who need to see little wins and that motivates them to do more. And so for those people, I would recommend starting with the easier tasks because you can knock those out. And if it's 9, 10 a.m. and you already have a couple wins under your belt, well, it's going to be really easy to tackle that harder task. But for me personally, that feels like I'm procrastinating for that harder task. And that, it's harder for me to focus and then try and dial myself in to do that one thing. So I like to knock it out quick, and then I'll handle the other smaller tasks. And I find that the smaller, easier tasks, it feels kind of like a break from doing the harder task. And so that allows me to do more than 3 in a day. But, like I said, as long as my 3 are accomplished, I consider my day to be successful.
I love it.
I love that too, because it gives you goals. It gives you achievable goals. And when you crush those by 10 a.m., it's like, wow, that, the world is my oyster, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you can do whatever you want from that point. And I love the reason I really wanted to talk to you is the productivity and efficiency part of, what you teach. And of course, the investing, the commitment, the consistency, the things we talked about earlier, but that productivity and efficiency is so much. And we work with a lot of coaches and creators and podcasters, authors, speakers, and we find that they have one major thing in common. They're involved in so many different projects that they literally don't know which foot to walk out the front door with this morning, right? They don't know how to pull all of that into like one concise concept with this great, business story with a lot of clarity and so forth. So, we work with them to kind of try and hone that story in and figure out, okay, who am I talking to? How, what do I do for them? How do I serve them? How am I going to make their life better? What makes me different from everybody else? Mm-hmm. So you mentioned there were some things that really make you unique in your space. And I want to give you the floor for a second to kind of talk about what you feel those are in the investment in the coaching space.
Yeah, definitely. So I like what you're saying about multiple projects and different things going on, because I do have a lot of things going on in my life at the same time. But what I find is that if I try to mix everything, then it gets confusing. But if I time block my day and I have, let's say, 3 tasks for this assignment or this organization, then I have 3 tasks for this organization, 3 tasks for this organization, I can usually get through a lot of those tasks if I just time block, and that's the only thing that I'm focused on. Because we have so many distractions, so many notifications coming our way, that it's hard to try and do everything at once. But if you have specific times of the day that you have blocked out to do each one of those things, that keeps you in check. You're scheduled, you have everything organized, and you can focus on just that thing for that time block. Now, as far as what makes me unique in my space, I believe that I provide a more holistic approach to investing. So there's different investing styles, and it's a very popular thing to want to learn how to invest these days. But what I find is that most people focus on just one specific investment. And although I believe you should go deep and you should get really good at that one investment, I also believe that most people just do not have the skill set to do that. And it also puts you at risk. So I know it's kind of a bold statement, but I will explain.
It's a bold place to do it.
So I believe that most people do not have the ability to become an absolute expert at one thing. Not everybody can be an expert at real estate. But what if I just have somebody manage the real estate aspect of my portfolio? Because I want to be diversified, right? If all my eggs are in one basket, and let's say I am an expert in real estate, well, what if the real estate market crashes? What if something happens to my one source of income and now I'm no longer an investor? I maybe have to go find a job. So I believe in extreme diversification, because that creates a recession-proof portfolio. So we have 2 types of diversification that I teach. Number 1 is external diversification. So for example, different industries. So I'm in real estate, I'm in exotic cars and private jets and yachts and oil wells and e-commerce and Bitcoin mining. And these, for the most part, aren't really related. So I'm externally diversified, but within each one of those sectors, I'm also internally diversified. So let's say I have oil wells. Well, guess what? It's not all in one oil well. It's maybe 10 different wells in 2-3 different states, different fields, different plots of land that have different oil sources. So even if 1 or 2 of them aren't producing, well, the rest of that sector still is producing. So it's like a double layer of protection. So if I'm just an expert in real estate or just in oil wells, well, chances are that I'm at a higher risk than somebody who's very, very well diversified. So what if I, as the investor, just took a passive role, invested my capital, and hired experts in each one of those areas, and I just split profits with them? So my whole investment strategy is basically fractional ownership. So I have a fractional ownership of 10, 20, 30 different wells, and I have an expert operate them, and we split profits 50-50. So their success depends on my success. So they're incentivized, they're going to be producing, they're the absolute best in their field. I don't have 40 years of experience in drilling oil wells and producing oil and selling it to refineries, but they do. And they have access to grandfathered plots of land that I would never, ever have access to. So why don't I just tap into what they're already doing and do that across 30, 40 different industries?
I love it.
Yeah, the super common sense way of doing it. I love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Because like real estate's my thing, right? I used to be a stock market investor. Made a lot of money, lost a lot of money, and then I'm like, well, if I can't paint it, cut the grass, or burn it down, I don't want it. And I went after like real estate for a long time, and then I've learned to invest in people, and I've learned not quite to the extreme you're talking about, which is really great, to the depth that you're talking about. But one thing Antonio say, I've always said, it blows my mind that people will take advice on investing in real estate from people who have never bought real estate. Literally, and you're looking at them like, what? Like, what? It's like going to the brick mason to fix your tooth. He don't know anything about teeth. Like, it blows my mind. And so I love your thought process. Go to the guy that knows what he's talking about, or the girl,
what's already happening,
and invest in what's happening. And then I love the split too, because then they're, like you said, they're incentivized to do that. It's not some commission that they're making because they talked you into this stock or that stock or something, and they're going to get paid whether you do or not. It's totally based on everybody wins, everybody loses. Yeah.
Exactly.
I want to double back on something just a minute, because I had a very interesting situation last week in my own life. I had a whole lot of balls in the air. Like, I had like a dozen things hit me at one time. Like, they're all out here. That not necessarily negative, but it can always turn that way. Not necessarily positive, because nothing was guaranteed. I asked me on Wednesday, he goes, hey man, what you going to do for the rest of the day? And I said, well, I've got a lot of stuff I need to be doing, but I cannot control the outcome of any of it. So I'm not going to do anything. What your feelings on that? There's times when you need to stop, right? I mean, like quit fixing on something that may not be broke, right? Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So for situations when I have just too many things going on at the same time, I do think rest is very important. But I feel like there's always at least one thing that I can do. So if I'm feeling overwhelmed, I would look for maybe one thing, two things that I can do instead of like a normal busy schedule, and at least do the things that I feel like are the highest priority. And if I don't really have too much control over them, then I'm okay with that outcome. And I'm going into this situation knowing that, hey, I'm going to do my best, and whatever happens, happens. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I love that. What would be something most people would be surprised to learn about you?
I think the biggest thing is that I love to do things other than work. I know I work all the time, but I do love to serve on nonprofit organizations, and I'm part of several up here in the Seattle area. And if I could do anything for the rest of my life, I would figure out how to automate my business to the point where all I could do is just nonprofit work. And I also play guitar. So
nice.
Oh, nice. What are a couple of the nonprofits you're working with, Austin?
So the biggest one is called Grace for All Nations. So it's a ministry that is international. It works mostly here in the Pacific Northwest, but we have conferences internationally as well. And so I'm their director of operations for Emmanuel Ziga Ministries. So I work with them very closely almost every single day, I'd say. And we're always organizing different events and stuff like that. And I really see a big impact that it's having on the world and many lives, even here locally. So I work with them very closely.
That's fantastic.
Yes, it is. It is.
Were you born and raised in the Pacific Northwest?
Yep. Yeah, I was near Seattle, about 20 minutes away from Seattle. So in the suburbs.
Yeah, I love that area of the world. I loved it. When I was involved in the whole mortgage debacle, I spent a lot of time there.
Yeah.
Loved
I
it.
like that it's big enough to be a city, but not so big that it's overwhelming, like LA maybe or New
Yeah.
York.
Or Atlanta. Yeah,
Yeah.
where we're at. We're
Yeah.
outside of Atlanta,
Mhm.
but yeah, Atlanta's just gotten
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Same
It's
thing,
crazy.
same
So,
Yeah.
thing. So,
I'll actually be down in Atlanta in January. I'm speaking at an event with John Maxwell, so you guys should come out.
hey, we would love it. We
yeah.
would absolutely
Okay.
love it. Yeah.
All right. That's
Yeah.
very interesting. You bet.
Yeah.
Well, I know we could talk to you for hours, Austin, but we're coming to a close, unfortunately. So tell everybody where they can learn more about you, and if they want to do business with you, how to contact you.
Yeah, so I actually have a unique approach to that. I just use Instagram as my landing page. And I find it the best because it's just more real. You know, a website's a website, but on Instagram, you can see me, you can see my posts, my stories. It's just more real and I like it better. And I think that's where everybody's headed to, just more real content. And so for me, it's Austin Zelan. AustinZelan. That's my Instagram handle. But I also have austinzelan.com where there's some more information.
Perfect.
Excellent. Excellent.
Well, we've had a blast getting to know you, Austin. Thank you so much for taking time with the Be Bold branding family today.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you.
You
Absolutely. We appreciate you. And listen to all the listeners out there. Hit that subscribe button. All right. We'll bring you great people just like Austin. And you know why we do this? We do it for prosperity. And we know at BrandFace prosperity favors the bold. So be bold, folks, just like Austin. And thank you, Ms. Tanya.
That's right.
Thank you, Austin.
As bold as Austin. All right, guys. We'll see you next time on Be Bold Branding.
Brought to you by BrandFace, the only comprehensive personal brand building system across the globe.